Um, so I've got a few demos just to build on what Richard was saying, and just to give you a bit of the history. There was must have been 3 or 4 years ago. There was a hackathon where this kind of concept of dragging and dropping icons was kind of developed. And it wasn't really, there wasn't a standard behind it, but it was something that was implemented in quite a number of the viewers. But then I think in Toronto, we looked at it again, and when we're looking at it, people were telling us that it's just really bad UX experience and that nobody really knows what to do with the icon, where to drag it and where to drop it. And it's not the easiest thing to drag the icon. So we were looking at different options of how we can make this more accessible and make it easier to go through different viewers. So I'm just going to go through some of the demos of the different interactions, and you'll see hopefully the issue with the UX side of it. So this is just to say that it's the same as the existing drag and drop, but the difference with content state, as Richard was pointing out, is that you can take the actual view of the object you've got, and potentially if you've got Mirador, you could have 3 different windows open, and you can encode that in content state, and then that information will be encoded to this icon, and you can drag across to a different viewer and drop it in. I mean, there's loads of questions like, how do you know where to drop it, and how do you know this is possible? But you can see this example where I've zoomed into Devil's Bridge, and I've dragged it across, and it's opened up the same viewport in a separate viewer. And if you think about this viewer, this would be the kind of view you might have on, say, the Stanford site, the Oxford site. It might be the Universal Viewer, it might be Mirador, and there would be some way in this viewer to open up the sharing type functionality. And then you might take it to another viewer, and this could be the Project Mirador, the default Mirador. It could be a Mirador that you configured with your own different settings, just how you like them. Or it could be a Mirador that you've got annotations set up. So you're taking it, say, from an institution site to one you've customized yourself with extra features. So this type of use case might be useful for moving from, say, UV to Mirador, so moving across viewers. And then moving from one institution to a different institution, different viewer. But it does have lots of UX issues. The other one that we thought was more accessible was this copy and paste option. So this works similar. Actually, if we go to fun on. And this time when you click the button, it copies it to the clipboard. And I've kind of deliberately gone for the same icon just to make it as confusing as possible. Because again, you don't know what's going to happen really with this icon. And I think we're going to go into the later part of this meeting that there are different behaviors associated with the icon, and it's not standard even now. And to add the complexity of content state is going to make the problem worse. But the functionality is really powerful. So I've copied my view into the clipboard, and then I've gone to a separate viewer, and I'm going to do paste. And you can see again, it's opened up exactly what I've seen. So this is a lot easier than dragging and dropping the icon, but it's even more hidden, this kind of secret functionality. If you know you can press Control V at a certain point, then you can transfer the viewer across. The next one is the link through, and this is the one that we've seen the most implementation of. It's kind of the lowest barrier for implementation, and it's you have a link to a viewer, and you add on a parameter called IIIF content, and then you can pass in a link to a manifest or a link to the view. So if I have a look at this one, I've got these lists of pre-canned links here. And you can imagine this might be like when you go to a website and you see the social shares. This is almost like a IIIF version of social shares. So you can see all the different IIIF tools. And when you're looking at this manifest, I say, well, I want to create an exhibit, or I want to start annotating, or maybe I want to look at it in Mirador, or I want to look at it in the UV. And in this example, the institution, so Stanford and the Folger, has decided these are the tools that I want to offer to my users. And so I've preset the links, and it just means they need to click at them. And in this example, an exhibit, it'll open up the manifest, and you can start creating your exhibit as it's kind of been preloaded. And then this version of Simple Annotation Server, once you've logged in, it'll open up a Mirador, and then you can start annotating, and you're kind of creating your own annotations in your own annotation store. Mirador is the only one that actually supports this, and this is the actual content state parameter. I've kind of hidden the rest of the ones, but Mirador is the only one that actually supports it. And the Universal Sports Viewer supports it just with a different name, but hopefully that's a relatively easy fix. So that's link through, which I think is relatively accessible, but it's not allowing the user to take it to a certain place. It's the institution publishing the viewer saying, I've blessed these services, and if you click on this link, they'll open up in a new viewer. There's two more interactions. One is download, and one is a bookmarking service. So this is similar to the other ones, but instead of being dragging, dropping, and copy and pasting, I can find out what I'm viewing, and then I can click download and just save it to my desktop. And this is kind of, I didn't even know what to call it. I mean, do you call it constant state? Do you call it a IIIF bookmark, a citation? This thing that I've downloaded or what I'm looking at. So I've downloaded it, and then I've gone to a new viewer, and I can browse it. And I can get this thing and then upload it again and click upload, and it's taking me to the same view. So this might be really useful if you download this thing and email it to somebody else, and then they can upload it to their own viewer, or you can save it to your own hard drive as kind of like a bookmark or a citation of something you were looking at. And then the last one is more like a kind of a bookmarking service, and this is much more of a mock-up. So if, for example, I was looking at this newspaper and it's just buried in text, and I'd spent loads of time trying to find out about the Federation of Health Resorts, I've made this kind of fake service called Glenn's Amazing Bookmarking Service trademark. And if I click it, it creates a bookmark, and then I can go over to the next part of the page, and I can create another bookmark. And this could be kind of the service that maybe an institution provides. So it allows you to kind of gather manifests around the world and being able to kind of bookmark it in your local bookmarking service. Or it could be something that's maybe a kind of a cloud service, which is kind of central, either IIIF community or somebody else might host. And so you go around picking up your annotations and putting them into your bookmark service. And then when you went to your Glenn's Amazing Bookmark Service, TM, you refresh it and you see all of the bookmarks that you've kind of picked up as you've been traveling around. Potentially, you could also do this with something like Pinterest. So this is an example of maybe using a different service which could kind of act as a bookmarking service. So if I've clicked into, say, I'm not even going to say that, into this location, and I click Pinterest, it opens up a new window, and it kind of creates a sort of bookmark to what you're looking at. It's not the most ideal because then, I mean, the image is great because this is the region that I'm looking at, but when you click the link, it needs to go somewhere. So that somewhere kind of needs to be a wayfinding place, which in lots of ways kind of turns into this IIIF bookmarking service. And then when you get here, you'd imagine that you'd be able to open it in Mirador, open it in your own annotation store, or take it in different places. But they are the 5 different interactions that we think are going to be really useful, especially for front-end users to be able to take the content into different places.